We're going to talk now about a family dog that was dumped. A family dog that was aged 21 was dumped by its owner for being too old and no longer required. It was dumped in the Republic of Ireland in Monaghan, pulled out of a pound by a local woman and taken in by a Northern Ireland charity called Almost Home. Many elderly dogs are dumped right across the UK and Ireland. Holly's owner told a dog warden who was summoned to collect her from her home that she was unwanted and the owner wanted her euthanasised. Vets charge sometimes a steep fee, of course, to euthanasise a dog and dispose of the body. Owners sometimes don't want to pay, so they abandon the dog or dump it in a pound. I just think this is horrendous. Helen Jarvis is a volunteer at Heather House and has done great work with this dog. Helen, you're very welcome to talkTV today. How are you doing?
Yes, I'm good. Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning. Tell us what happened here.
Okay, so Holly arrived with one of the volunteers from Carrick Shelter. She had been advertised on the Carrick Shelter's Facebook page that morning, basically needing a home. Obviously, given the fact that she was reported to be 21 years old, there was highly unlikely that there was going to be many home offers, and we take many of our elderly dogs in from Carrick Shelter. So the owner of Almost Home reached out and basically promised a permanent home in Heather House, which is our retirement home for elderly dogs. Holly arrived with Alan, the volunteer, that afternoon, and we moved her into Heather House then shortly after, and she's doing really, really well.
It's just such a horrendous story that the owner decided after such a long time that the dog was too old and no longer wanted. I mean, you do want Holly, you want her to have a lovely retirement. How big a problem is this?
Well, I mean, at Almost Home, we're certainly not there to judge. Everybody has their reasons as to why they can no longer look after their pets.
I'm afraid I'm going to disagree with you, Helen. I am here to judge on this one. I think it's absolutely horrendous and dreadful that someone would do that to a dog. I think it's awful.
Yeah. From our point of view, we just want to offer a lifeline to these dogs, particularly the elderly dogs, because, you know, the fact of the matter is that elderly dogs are not easy to rehome. And we opened Heather House in 2016 because we could see it was a growing problem. We could see that elderly dogs were arriving. They were spending a lot of time in a kennel environment, which was not ideal for them. People were not offering homes, and we knew that we had to do something. And so we opened Heather House in 2016, and it was to provide a home from home for elderly dogs. And, you know, since then, we have looked after over 130 dogs there. It's the ideal place for Holly because at Holly's age, obviously, she's going to have more needs than a younger dog. And she will get, you know, very specific care in Heather House. Yeah. We have a wonderful team there who love these dogs as if they're their own dogs. So, you know, Holly will spend the rest of her days being really, really well cared for and being absolutely adored by our team.
I'm sure you're doing a great job there, Helen. I know you're a volunteer. I know you give up your time. I know there are a lot of people who look after these elderly dogs. But you must have an emotional response when people decide, sorry, the dog's just too old.
Well, obviously I do. A lot of the times when the dogs come to us, we don't necessarily know the circumstances as to why they've arrived with us. Sometimes we do. And yeah, I mean, I have 2 elderly dogs of my own. And obviously, you know, I can't really relate at times when dogs come into us. I can't relate. But if you were to dwell on those reasons, it would be very hard to do what we do. So we have to just switch off, Peter. We really, really do. We have to switch off and just concentrate on the care of the dogs.
Great stuff. Well, I know Holly will have a good retirement. I know that she her eyesight and her hearing aren't so good these days, but presumably you're very, very aware of all those conditions. Listen, thank you, Helen. Really appreciate that. That's Helen Jarvis there, who's a volunteer at Heather House